Picture this. Two people start working at the same company on the same day, earning identical salaries. 20 years later, one is a millionaire living comfortably, while the other is drowning in debt and stress. Same income, same opportunities, completely different outcomes. What made the difference? It wasn't luck, intelligence, or some secret investment strategy. It was their psychology, how they thought about money. Today, I'm sharing life-changing rules from Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money that will completely transform how you see wealth, spending, and financial success. These aren't complex investment tips. They're simple psychological truths that separate the financially free from the financially trapped. Before we dive into these rules, here's what you need to understand. Money isn't math. It's psychology. We like to think financial decisions are logical. Earn more, spend less, invest wisely. But the reality is, we make money decisions with our emotions, our fears, our childhood experiences, and our desperate need to fit in with others. That's why a janitor can retire with $8 million, while a higher-earning doctor goes bankrupt. It's why lottery winners often end up broke, and why some of the smartest people make the dumbest financial mistakes. Morgan Housel spent years studying this phenomenon, and what he discovered will change how you think about every dollar you earn, spend, and save. These 7 rules aren't just about building wealth. They're about building a life where money works for you instead of against you. Rule number 1, no one is crazy when it comes to money. When you see someone make what seems like a terrible financial decision, buying an expensive car they can't afford, refusing to invest in the stock market, or hoarding cash under the mattress, your first instinct might be to think they're being irrational. But here's the truth. Every financial decision makes perfect sense to the person making it based on their unique life experience. Think about it. If you grew up during the Great Depression, you might never trust banks again. If you watched your parents lose their home in 2008, you might be terrified of debt. If you only known rising markets and steady jobs, you might feel comfortable with taking risks that would terrify someone else. Your view of money isn't shaped by spreadsheets and logic. It's shaped by what you've lived through, what you've seen, and what you've been taught to fear or desire. This rule changes everything because it teaches you 2 crucial things. First, have empathy for others' financial choices, even if they seem wrong to you. Second, examine your own money beliefs. What experiences shaped how you think about spending, saving, and investing? Are those beliefs still serving you, or are they holding you back? The most successful people aren't those who make perfect financial decisions. They're those who understand their own psychology and work with it, not against it. Rule number 2, luck and risk are siblings, and they play a bigger role in your financial life than you want to admit. Here's a story that illustrates this perfectly. Bill Gates attended one of the only high schools in the world that had a computer in 1968. That lucky break gave him a massive head start in technology. But his friend, Kent Evans, was just as smart and had the same opportunities. Kent died in a mountaineering accident before they could start their company together. Same starting point, same intelligence, same opportunities. One became the richest man in the world, the other story ended before it began. The difference? Luck and risk. This doesn't mean success is random. Bill Gates still had to work incredibly hard and make smart decisions, but it means outcomes are never 100% skill and never 100% luck. They're always a combination of both. Why does this matter for your money? Because it teaches you humility and perspective. When you succeed financially, don't take all the credit. Stay humble, because luck probably played a role. When others fail, don't assume they're lazy or stupid. They might have faced risks you never encountered. More importantly, this rule teaches you to focus on what you can control. You can't control luck, and you can't eliminate risk entirely, but you can make smart decisions, stay consistent, and position yourself to benefit when luck comes your way, while protecting yourself when risk strikes. The most financially successful people aren't those who face setbacks. They're those who survive long enough for their good decision to compound. Rule number 3, the inability to say enough is the fastest way to lose everything. Let me tell you about Bernie Madoff. He was already incredibly wealthy, running a successful investment firm, living a life most people could only dream of. He had money for 10 lifetimes, but it wasn't enough for him. He wanted more. More money, more status, more control. So he built the largest Ponzi scheme in history. The result? He lost everything. his freedom, his fortune, his family, his reputation. He died in prison, disgraced and alone, all because he couldn't say enough. This isn't just about billionaires making headlines. This happens to regular people every day. The person who has a comfortable retirement fund, but risks it all in a hot stock tip. The family that has a nice house, but goes into debt for a bigger one to impress the neighbors. The entrepreneur who has a profitable business, but over-leverages trying to grow faster. Here's the psychological trap. The goalpost keeps moving. You think if you just had $100,000 saved, you'd feel secure. Then you reach 100,000 and suddenly you need 500,000. Then a million. The number keeps growing because you're not chasing money. You're chasing a feeling of security or status that money can't actually provide. The antidote is defining your enough before you start chasing more. Ask yourself, how much money would it take for me to feel truly secure? What lifestyle would make me genuinely happy? What would winning actually look like for me? Write down those numbers, protect them, respect them, because real wealth isn't having everything you want, it's wanting what you have and knowing when you have enough. Rule number 4, time is your most powerful financial weapon, and most people waste it. Warren Buffett is worth over $100 billion. But here's the shocking part. He made 90% of his wealth after his 65th birthday. Not because he suddenly got smarter, but because he had decades for compound interest to work its magic. Buffett started investing when he was just 10 years old. By 30, he had 1 million. By 60, he had 3.8 billion. Today, he's worth over 100 billion. But here's the key insight. If he had started investing at 30, instead of 10, he'd be worth a fraction of what he is today. This is the power of compound interest. Albert Einstein allegedly called it the 8th wonder of the world, but most people completely misunderstand how it works. Compound interest doesn't reward brilliance, it rewards patience. It doesn't care how smart you are or how much you earn. It only cares about 2 things: how much you save and how long you let it grow. Here's what this means practically. A 25-year-old who saves $200 per month until retirement will have more money than a 35-year-old who saves $400 per month, even though the 35-year-old saves twice as much. A 10-year head start is more powerful than doubling the contribution. The biggest financial mistake most people make isn't picking the wrong investments, it's starting too late. Time is the one resource you can never get back, and it's the most important ingredient in building wealth. If you're young, this is your superpower. Even small amounts saved consistently will grow into substantial wealth over decades. If you're older, don't despair. You still have time, but you need to be more aggressive about saving and investing. The key insight: you don't need to be a genius to build wealth. You just need to start early and stay consistent. Rule number 5, wealth is what you don't see, and that changes everything about how you should think about money. There's a story about a janitor named Ronald Reed who worked at a gas station and then as a janitor his entire life. He drove an old car, wore simple clothes, and lived modestly. When he died at 92, everyone was shocked to discover he'd left behind $8 million. Meanwhile, we see celebrities, athletes, and business executives with expensive cars, massive houses, and designer everything. And we assume they're wealthy. But often, they're just spending a lot of money, which is the opposite of being wealthy. Here's the crucial distinction. Looking rich and being rich are completely different games. Looking rich is easy. You can lease a luxury car, finance a big house, buy expensive clothes on credit cards. Anyone can look rich for a while. But being rich, having actual wealth, is about what you don't spend. Wealth is the money you didn't spend on the car you could have bought. It's the house payment you didn't take on. It's the vacation you didn't finance. Wealth is invisible because it's the money that's saved and invested instead of consumed. This rule completely flips how most people think about success. We're conditioned to judge financial success by what people own, their cars, houses, clothes, gadgets. But true financial success is measured by what you don't see. The investments, the savings, the financial security that gives you options and freedom. The person driving the modest car might be a millionaire. The person in the flashy sports car might be drowning in debt. You can't tell someone's net worth by looking at their lifestyle. In fact, there's often an inverse relationship. This changes how you should think about your own money. Every dollar you spend on impressing others is a dollar that can't compound and grow into future wealth and freedom. Rule number 6, save money for flexibility, not just for specific goals. Most financial advice tells you to save for specific things: a house, a car, retirement, your kids' college. But Morgan Housel argues that the most important reason to save money is for something you can't predict: flexibility. Think about the last few years. How many people lost their jobs unexpectedly? How many had to deal with medical emergencies, financial crises, or once-in-a-lifetime opportunities that required quick financial decisions? The people who navigated these situations best weren't necessarily those with the highest incomes. They were those with the most financial flexibility. They had saved not for any specific purpose, but for whatever life threw at them. This kind of saving for the unknown, gives you something more valuable than specific purchase options. When you have money saved, you can quit a job you hate. You can take advantage of unexpected opportunities. You can weather emergencies without going into debt. You can make decisions based on what's best for you, not what you can afford. I know someone who got stuck in a terrible job for years because he had no savings. Every month, his entire paycheck went to bills and expenses. He was trapped, not by his skills or the job market, but by his lack of financial flexibility. Compare that to another friend who saved aggressively for years. When her company started making layoffs, she wasn't panicked. She was excited. She used it as an opportunity to start the business she always dreamed of. Same situation, completely different outcomes, all because of financial flexibility. The rule here is simple. Save money not just for what you want to buy, but for what you want to be able to do. Save for freedom, for options, for the ability to make choices based on what's right for you instead of what you can afford. Rule number 7. Being reasonable is more important than being rational, and this might be the most important rule of all. Traditional finance tells you to be perfectly rational, maximize returns, minimize costs, make decisions based purely on numbers and logic. But here's the problem. Humans aren't rational, and trying to be perfectly rational often leads to worse outcomes than being reasonable. Let me give you an example. Rationally, you should invest every spare dollar in the stock market because historically, it provides the best long-term returns. But what happens when the stock market crashes 40% and you panic and sell everything? You've just turned a temporary loss into a permanent one. A reasonable approach might be to keep some money in lower return but safer investments, even though it's not mathematically optimal. Why? Because it helps you sleep at night and prevents you from making emotional decisions that destroy your wealth. The reasonable investor who can stick with their plan through market crashes will outperform the rational investor who panics and sells at the worst possible time. This applies to all areas of money management. It might be rational to buy the cheapest car that gets you from point A to point B, but if driving that car makes you miserable and affects your confidence at work, it might be reasonable to spend a bit more. It might be rational to live in the cheapest possible housing, but if it's in a dangerous neighborhood or far from your job, the reasonable choice might cost more, but improve your quality of life and career prospects. The key insight is this: the best financial plan isn't the one that looks perfect on paper, it's the one that you actually stick with. And you can only stick with plans that align with your psychology, your values, and your emotional needs. These 7 rules aren't just about money. They're about understanding human nature and working with your psychology instead of against it. Remember, no one is crazy, so examine your own money beliefs. Luck and risk play bigger roles than you think, so stay humble and focus on what you control. Define your enough before you start chasing more. Use time as your greatest weapon by starting early and staying consistent. Build real wealth by focusing on what you don't spend, not what you do. Save for flexibility and options, not just specific goals. And be reasonable rather than perfectly rational. The people who master these psychological principles don't just build wealth, they build lives of freedom, security, and peace of mind. Money becomes a tool that works for them instead of a source of stress that controls them. If these rules resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more insights that can transform your relationship with money. Drop a comment and let me know which rule hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching, and remember, the psychology of money is more important than the mathematics of money.